Behind the painted mustache and ever-present cigar lurked one of the most brilliant minds in comedy history. While his image may speak volumes, it was Groucho Marx's razor-sharp wit that truly revolutionized American humor. How did a struggling vaudeville performer transform into one of history's greatest comedic geniuses? And what dark truths lay hidden beneath that famous greasepaint disguise? Julius Henry Marx entered the world on October 2, 1890, born to struggling immigrant parents in New York City. His mother Minnie, a domineering stage parent with big ambitions, and father Samuel, a tailor whose business ventures repeatedly failed, created a household where comedy became both escape and necessity. As the third of 5 brothers in a cramped tenement apartment, young Julius developed his quick wit as a survival mechanism. The poverty that defined his childhood would later fuel his merciless mockery of the wealthy elite. Growing up on the Lower East Side, Julius absorbed the rhythms and language of immigrant America. He dropped out of school at 12, but continued his education through voracious reading, a habit he maintained throughout his life. This self-taught intellectualism would later surprise those who knew him only through his madcap screen persona. Early attempts at legitimate jobs proved disastrous. He was simply too restless and undisciplined for conventional employment. Entertainment seemed the only viable option for a young man with his temperament and talents. His brothers had already begun performing together when Julius joined them in their struggling vaudeville act. These early performances bore little resemblance to the anarchic comedy that would later make them famous. Instead, they presented themselves as a singing group called the Four Nightingales. Julius showed little vocal talent but compensated with comedic interjections. Audiences responded more enthusiastically to the humor than the music, an early indication of their true calling. The brothers slowly incorporated more comedy into their act, often improvising when songs fell flat. The iconic Groucho character wasn't carefully crafted. It was born of necessity. In 1921, running late for a performance after his son's birth, Marx didn't have time to apply his usual fake mustache. In a moment of desperation, he grabbed some grease paint and smeared it across his upper lip and added matching eyebrows. That hasty decision created the most recognizable face in comedy history. The absurd artificiality of the disguise became part of the joke. Audiences knew they were watching a performance, not reality. This deliberate falseness broke the fourth wall before such a concept was even common in entertainment. The complete Groucho look, stooped posture, round glasses, cigar, and those painted-on eyebrows, began as theatrical exaggeration but became something more profound, his hunched walk suggesting a predatory animal stalking its prey. The glasses gave him an intellectual air that contrasted beautifully with his often lowbrow humor. The cigar, which he rarely actually smoked on screen, became a prop for emphasis and timing. Together, these elements created a character both instantly recognizable and utterly unique in American culture. The absurdity of his appearance wasn't just funny, it was subversive. Audiences immediately understood they weren't meant to believe the disguise. Instead, they were invited to join a conspiracy against convention itself. This visual contradiction perfectly complemented the verbal bombs he was about to drop on unsuspecting audiences. His character existed in a space between reality and fiction. Not quite himself, but not entirely divorced from his true personality either. This ambiguity allowed him to say things that would have been unacceptable coming from a real person. The Marx brothers struggled through years of grueling vaudeville tours before finding their comedic voice. Traveling across America exposed them to diverse audiences and sharpened their ability to read a crowd. Their act evolved through trial and error, with many painful failures teaching valuable lessons about timing and audience psychology. Minnie Marx, their mother and manager, pushed them relentlessly, convinced her sons were destined for greatness. Despite evidence to the contrary, her faith would eventually be vindicated, but not before years of hardship had hardened the brothers into comedy warriors. Their breakthrough came in 1914 while performing in Texas. During their show, audience members left to watch a runaway mule in the street. When they returned, the brothers abandoned their usual act and began mocking the crowd instead. Groucho's quick-witted insults had the audience howling with laughter. This moment of improvisation revealed their true comedic power: anarchic, unpredictable, and utterly original. The brothers realized they had stumbled onto something revolutionary, comedy that attacked rather than appeased the audience. From that moment on, aggression became the cornerstone of their approach. With this new approach, Groucho developed his trademark style of rapid-fire delivery and devastating wordplay. What made him revolutionary wasn't just that he was funny, it was how he dismantled language itself. His verbal gymnastics turned ordinary conversation into battlefield. Where other comics relied on physical humor, Groucho weaponized words: outside of a dog, a book is man's best friend. Inside of a dog, it's too dark to read. Such lines weren't just jokes, they were linguistic ambushes that forced listeners to reconsider the very nature of communication. His humor operated on multiple levels simultaneously. The surface joke provided immediate laughter, while deeper wordplay rewarded more attentive listeners. This layered approach meant his comedy appealed to both casual viewers seeking simple entertainment and intellectuals appreciating the linguistic sophistication. Critics noted how Groucho could deliver cutting social commentary disguised as absurdist humor, making him both broadly popular and critically respected. A rare combination in entertainment, the brothers conquered Broadway in the 1920s with hits like I'll Say She Is and The Coconuts. These theatrical successes showcased their unique brand of humor to sophisticated New York audiences who embraced their anarchic energy despite its unconventional nature. Broadway critics recognized something fresh and vital in their approach to comedy. No longer struggling vaudevillians, they had arrived at the pinnacle of American theater. Their success came at a pivotal moment in entertainment history as the medium of film was transforming from silent to sound pictures. When Hollywood called, Groucho and his brothers brought their anarchic energy to the silver screen. Though silent film was giving way to talkies, Groucho's visual absurdity, particularly that painted on Mustache, maintained a connection to silent comedy. Yet, it was his verbal brilliance that truly dazzled audiences. Films like Duck Soup and A Night at the Opera revealed a mind that could dance circles around conventional thinking. The transition to film required adjustments to their style, but the core of their appeal remained intact: the gleeful demolition of social pretense. Their early films, produced at Paramount Pictures, captured the brothers at their most unrestrained. The Coconuts, 1929, and Animal Crackers, 1930, essentially filmed their Broadway hits, preserving their theatrical energy while introducing them to a wider audience. Monkey Business, 1931, and Horse Feathers, 1932, further developed their cinematic style. But it was Duck Soup, 1933, that represented their anarchic peak. A commercial disappointment upon release, this satire of war and politics would later be recognized as their masterpiece. Its failure prompted Paramount to drop the brothers, forcing them to reinvent themselves at MGM. Particularly memorable was Groucho's on-screen relationship with Margaret Dumont. Cast as the wealthy society matron in several films, Dumont became his perfect foil. Her apparent obliviousness to his insults created comedy gold. "I've had a perfectly wonderful evening, but this wasn't it," he'd tell her with a raised eyebrow. Their chemistry was so effective that many believed Dumont didn't realize she was being mocked. Years later, Groucho would insist she was in on the joke all along, a consummate performer playing her role to perfection. Their collaboration created an archetypal comedy dynamic. The unflappable straight person contrasted with the anarchic comedian. Dumont's dignified bearing made Groucho's irreverence even more shocking. She represented everything his character despised: wealth, social status, pretension. Yet he continually sought her approval and financial support. This contradiction added depth to what might otherwise have been merely absurd comedy. Dumont appeared in 7 Marx Brothers films, becoming as essential to their formula as the brothers themselves. At MGM, producer Irving Thalberg insisted on more conventional storytelling, including romantic subplots and musical numbers that often interrupted the brothers' comedy. This approach yielded commercial success with A Night at the Opera, 1935, and A Day at the Races, 1937. Though purists preferred their earlier, more undiluted work, these later films softened their anarchic edge but broadened their appeal. The formula continued with diminishing returns through the 1940s as the brothers aged and audience tastes evolved. Their final film together, Love Happy, 1949, is remembered primarily for featuring a young Marilyn Monroe. Behind Groucho's relentless wordplay lurked a darker subtext. His humor was fundamentally about power, specifically undermining those who held it. Authority figures, social elites, and pretentious intellectuals all fell before his verbal assaults. This wasn't just comedy, it was rebellion. The Marx Brothers rose to fame during the Great Depression, and their films offered audiences the cathartic pleasure of watching the wealthy and powerful brought low by these manic outsiders. Groucho's mockery was more than entertainment. It was social critique disguised as absurdity. His humor targeted the hypocrisies of American society, the gap between democratic ideals and plutocratic reality, the emptiness of social rituals, the corruption of political institutions. In Duck Soup, as the leader of Fredonia, Groucho satirized the absurdities of nationalism and war. In A Night at the Opera, he exposed the pretensions of high culture. These themes resonated during the economic collapse of the 1930s, when many Americans felt betrayed by traditional institutions. The brothers provided not just escape, but vindication, confirmation that the system truly was as ridiculous as it seemed. As film offers declined in the 1940s, Groucho reinvented himself yet again. You Bet Your Life premiered on radio in 1947 before transitioning to television, where it ran until 1961. The show revealed yet another facet of his genius. The ability to engage with ordinary people. Gone was the painted-on mustache, replaced by a real one he grew for this new chapter. The physical transformation symbolized a shift in his comedy. Still razor-sharp, but somehow more authentic, the program's format was simple. Contestants answered questions for prize money. But the real entertainment came from Groucho's unscripted interactions with participants. His improvisational brilliance shone as he found humor in the most mundane conversations. A duck would descend from the ceiling when contestants said the secret word. But the true magic was Groucho's ability to extract comedy from everyday people. These weren't scripted punchlines, but organic moments of wit that showcased his lightning-fast mind. You Bet Your Life demonstrated Groucho's remarkable versatility. Where his films had relied on carefully crafted scripts and rehearsed routines, the show required him to create comedy spontaneously from unpredictable conversations. He proved equally adept at this challenge, sometimes appearing genuinely surprised and delighted by contestants' responses. This spontaneity revealed the true depth of his comedic mind. He wasn't merely reciting lines, but actively creating humor in real time. The show's popularity sustained his career for 14 years and introduced him to a new generation. Behind the scenes, the program wasn't as completely unscripted as it appeared. Contestants were pre-interviewed to identify promising material, and some exchanges were edited for broadcast. Nevertheless, Groucho's responses were largely improvised, requiring extraordinary quick thinking. The show's producer, John Guedel, recognized that Groucho's conversational wit was his greatest asset and designed the format to showcase this talent. The minimalist approach, essentially just Groucho talking with ordinary people, proved more enduring than elaborate comedy sketches. Might have been the paradox of Groucho was that while his public persona exuded confidence and aggression, the private Julius Marx harbored deep insecurities. 3 failed marriages revealed a man uncomfortable with intimacy. His first wife, Ruth Johnson, bore him 2 children but couldn't compete with his workaholic tendencies. His second marriage to Kay Gorsey lasted just 3 years. His third wife, Eden Hartford, was 24 years his junior. Their relationship ended after 13 turbulent years. Each failure reinforced his cynical view of relationships, providing more material for bitter jokes about marriage. His famous quip, "I don't want to belong to any club that would have me as a member," wasn't just a clever line. It reflected genuine self-doubt. This statement perfectly captured his contradictory nature, desperate for acceptance, yet contemptuous of anyone who offered it. Friends described him as restless, constantly reading, and deeply intellectual. The gap between his scholarly mind and his populist comedy created tension that fueled his creativity, but complicated his personal life. He collected fine art and first edition books, yet performed slapstick comedy. He quoted Shakespeare and T. S. Eliot, yet told bawdy jokes. Those who knew him privately often remarked on his melancholy nature. Like many comedians, his humor emerged partly from pain, the childhood poverty, the years of struggle, the failed relationships. Comedy became both shield and weapon, protecting him from vulnerability while attacking a world he found absurd and unjust. His daughter Miriam later recalled how he would retreat into books when family life became too chaotic, seeking solace in literature rather than human connection. This emotional distance made him a difficult father, but perhaps a better comedian. Groucho's influence extended far beyond his contemporaries. His rapid-fire delivery, sophisticated wordplay, and social commentary laid groundwork for modern comedy. Without Groucho, there would be no Woody Allen, no Jon Stewart, no sardonic stand-up tradition questioning authority through humor. His legacy lives on in every comedian who uses wit as a weapon against hypocrisy and pretension. Even those who have never seen his films have absorbed his influence through generations of comedians who studied and emulated his style. his impact transcends comedy, extending into philosophy and cultural criticism. Intellectuals from Hannah Arendt to Antonin Artaud recognized the subversive power of his humor. The Surrealists embraced him as a kindred spirit, challenging rational thought. T.S. Eliot famously wrote him a fan letter requesting a photograph, to which Groucho responded by asking for one of Eliot in return. This exchange between high culture and popular entertainment epitomized Groucho's unique position, a comedian whose intellectual credentials rivaled those of the academics who analyzed his work. Perhaps most remarkable was how Groucho's image transcended his performances. Those distinctive glasses with attached nose, eyebrows, and mustache, known as Groucho glasses, became one of the most recognized disguises in the world. By the 1940s, these novelty items were mass-produced, allowing anyone to temporarily assume his identity. Even those who had never seen a Marx Brothers film instantly recognized the reference when Apple designed its disguise emoji. In 2020, they naturally chose the Groucho glasses, cementing his visual legacy in digital communication. This visual shorthand entered the global lexicon, meaning comedy across language barriers. The glasses appeared everywhere, from political cartoons to Halloween costumes, becoming a universal symbol of humor itself. The irony was profound. A comedian whose greatest strength was verbal dexterity became immortalized through a visual gag. Yet this contradiction perfectly encapsulated Groucho's essence, the visual absurdity complementing the verbal brilliance, each making the other more effective. His painted mustache had become as recognizable as Chaplin's tramp or Mickey Mouse's ears. During his final years, Groucho experienced renewed appreciation. College students during the countercultural 1960s rediscovered his anti-authoritarian humor, particularly in films like Duck Soup. Its satirical take on war and politics resonated with Vietnam-era audiences. In 1972, at 81 years old, Groucho performed a sold-out show at Carnegie Hall, proving his enduring appeal across generations. 2 years later, he received an honorary Academy Award for his lifetime contribution to film. After decades of commercial decline, he found himself suddenly relevant again. This late career renaissance was not without complications. His companion during these years, Aaron Fleming, was accused by his family of exploiting his deteriorating mental condition for financial gain. The legal battles over his care overshadowed his final days, adding a tragic coda to his remarkable life. After his death, these disputes continued over his estate, with Fleming eventually losing her claims to any inheritance. These sad circumstances couldn't diminish his artistic legacy, but they added complexity to the personal narrative behind the public figure. Groucho Marx passed away on August 19, 1977, at age 86. But his influence only grew stronger in death. The contradiction that defined him, a verbal genius whose most recognizable feature was visual silence, continues to fascinate. His comedy worked on multiple levels: slapstick for those who wanted simple laughs, linguistic brilliance for intellectual audiences, and social critique for the politically minded. Few performers have managed such broad appeal while maintaining artistic integrity. Each generation discovers him anew, finding different aspects to appreciate. Film scholars analyze his anarchic deconstruction of social norms. Linguists study his masterful manipulation of language. Political scientists recognize his satire of institutional power, and audiences simply laugh at jokes that remain funny decades after they were written. This multifaceted appeal explains his enduring relevance in a comedy landscape that has changed dramatically since his era. Unlike many historical comedians whose humor seems dated or offensive to modern sensibilities, Groucho's wit retains its sharpness and sophistication. The ultimate irony is that Julius Marx created Groucho as a disguise, yet the character revealed deeper truths than conventional performers ever could. By hiding behind absurdity, he gained freedom to speak honestly about society's hypocrisies. The painted mustache wasn't just a gimmick. It was a declaration that nothing should be taken at face value, not authority, not social norms, and certainly not Groucho himself. The artificiality of his appearance highlighted the artificiality of the social structures he mocked. This deliberate inauthenticity created space for authentic commentary. By establishing himself as obviously false, he could speak truths that serious commentators couldn't approach. His comedy operated like a Trojan horse, the ridiculous exterior concealing incisive critique. Audiences laughed at the surface gags while absorbing deeper messages about power, class, and institutional absurdity. Even today, his approach offers lessons for those seeking to communicate difficult truths inaccessible ways. The clown speaks what the sage cannot. What endures most powerfully isn't just Groucho's jokes, but his perspective, the sideways glance at human folly, the raised eyebrow questioning everything we take for granted. In a world of carefully constructed images, his deliberately fake appearance reminded us that authenticity comes not from how we look, but from what we say and do. The painted mustache may have been silent, but the mind behind it spoke volumes about the human condition, making Julius Groucho Marx not just a comedian, but a philosopher disguised as a clown. His worldview combined cynicism about institutions with genuine compassion for individuals. He attacked pretension and power without becoming bitter or misanthropic. Behind the savage wit lay a humanist perspective, a belief that people deserved better than the absurd systems governing their lives. This philosophical foundation gave his comedy substance beyond mere joke-making. It's why academic institutions eventually recognized him as not just an entertainer, but a cultural critic of significance. The humor remained accessible, but the thinking behind it was profound. Though his physical comedy relied on silence, Groucho's true genius was verbal, making him, paradoxically, comedy's silent genius. His words continue to echo nearly a century later, reminding us that the most powerful weapon against absurdity is humor itself. Behind that famous greasepaint disguise wasn't just a performer, but a revolutionary who changed how we think about comedy, language, and truth. The mustache may have been fake, but the genius was gloriously real.